It's Friday, so it's time for our national town hall meeting, Brunch with Bernie, with the guy I think of as America's senator, although Vermonters are very proud to call him theirs. Senator Bernie Sanders, his website, sanders.senate.gov. Senator, welcome.
Great to be with you, Tom.
Thank you. Congratulations on the VA bill being passed. That's huge.
Well, it is, and it's something we worked really, really hard on, and I'm glad the President signed it yesterday. Bottom line here is the VA provides good quality health care for about 6.5 million veterans who go into VA health care every single year. What we have had is unacceptably long waiting lines in a number of facilities around the country. What this legislation does is pour a lot of money into making sure that veterans now will have expedited care. If they're on long waiting lines, they'll be able to go to a private physician or a community health center or a Department of Defense base. Furthermore, what we did is put $5 billion into strengthening the VA so they'll have the resources to hire the doctors, nurses, other medical personnel, get the space they need so that in the future, when people apply to VA healthcare, they will be able to get in a timely manner. We put some strong language in terms of accountability, so we'll not see people manipulating data as they have in the past. They will be held accountable for that. And we also dealt with issues dealing with sexual assault, making sure that anyone who was assaulted in the military will get good quality care at a VA facility, that the wives of and husbands of soldiers who lost their lives in Iraq will be able to take advantage of the post-9/11 GI Bill and a number of other provisions. Bottom line, it was, I think, a good piece of legislation which will give support to the VA healthcare system and protect the people who have put their lives on the line to defend us, and many of whom have come home from war with some serious issues.
And it's truly astounding that you were able. I mean, that you were able to get this thing through Congress. I mean, they're just doing nothing.
It is very sad to me. As a result of unprecedented Republican obstructionism, we are seeing almost no legislation of significance passed. Yesterday, actually, I was in Washington with the president when he signed the bill, and I joked with him about the fact, wondered if he still knew how to sign bills like this because he does it so rarely. The fact is that despite so many enormous problems facing our country in terms of much too high unemployment, the general collapse of the middle class, increases in poverty, climate change, high cost of college education, need to raise the minimum wage, you name it, we're doing virtually nothing. So this bill is, an example of, I guess, of what can happen. And I was pleased to have worked with the Republican Jeff Miller, who's chairman of the House Committee on Veterans Affairs. We fought hard, and he has his views and I have mine, but we both knew that it was imperative to pass a piece of legislation. John McCain, who I disagree with on virtually every issue, John played a good role in the Senate in making sure this happened. In the end, the result is that we have a bill which will protect the needs of many veterans.
That's great.
The other thing that happened this week is I think people are aware that the Department of Justice reached an agreement with Bank of America as a result of their subprime actions and illegal actions, and they were fined $17 billion. Much of it went back to help people who were ripped off by Bank of America. Some went to a fine to the U.S. Treasury. And we don't want to deny that $17 billion is a sizable hunk of cash. But on the other hand, when we realize what Bank of America and Citigroup and J.P. Morgan Chase and these other huge financial institutions did to America in terms of their greed and their recklessness and their illegal behavior, which caused this massive recession that started in 2008, the results of which were horrendous unemployment, people losing their life saving, people losing their homes. Just the awful setback for the American economy and for tens and tens of millions of people. And when you look at that reality, the truth is that $17 million is just not a lot of money. And by the nature of these settlements, nobody goes to jail. None of these guys have gone to jail. Big guys have not gone to jail, who really committed terrible illegal acts against the American people. And right now, of the 6 largest financial institutions in this country that were bailed out because they were quote-unquote too big to fail, people will be surprised to know that 5 out of 6 of them are now larger than they were when we bailed them out because they were too big to fail. I think, both from a preventative measure in terms of not wanting to see another collapse and another bailout, plus the fact in terms of trying to create an economy which is not controlled by a small number of huge financial institutions. These six large financial institutions on Wall Street have assets equivalent to about 60% of the GDP of the United States of America. They issue about half of the mortgages in this country and two-thirds of the credit cards. I mean, they are just an unbelievable player. Instead of playing the role that banks traditionally have done, that is to get money out into the economy, to create jobs, these guys live in a world unto themselves, and their only function in life is to make as much money as they can. So I think they are much, much too big. I think we've got to break them up. That's a kind of radical act for the year 2014, maybe not such a radical act 100 years ago for people like Teddy Roosevelt and William Howard Taft. But when entities become so big and so powerful, both economically and politically, I think you have to say, sorry, we're going to have to break you guys up, bring more competition into the marketplace, and less danger in terms of future bailouts. Yeah. While we're on the subject of the economy, we learned just a few days ago that Walgreens has decided not to move its headquarters to Switzerland and take advantage of this inversion tax provision, which allows American companies to merge with other companies to take advantage of all kinds of tax breaks and lower their tax burden in the United States. So I think Walgreens ran into a whole lot of opposition. Many people all over this country said, excuse me, if you do that, we're going to boycott Walgreens. And I think they rethought what they were going to do. But there are other companies who have done this and are in the process of doing this. And we call these people just corporate deserters. I mean, these are people who turn their backs on this country. And to cut their tax bill means one of two things. It means the middle class and working families are going to have to pay more in taxes, or it means that we're not going to have the revenue to provide the basic needs of millions of American people. And neither of those alternatives are acceptable. So, this takes us back to the whole issue of tax reform, takes us back to the fact that 1 out of 4 major corporations in America pays 0 in taxes. That aggregate, if you look at corporate taxation from an aggregate point of view, the percentage of revenue coming into the federal government from corporate America is substantially less than where it was 50 or 60 years ago. So the rich get richer, and we see the wealthiest people in this country, in some cases, if you're a hedge fund manager, paying a lower tax rate than a middle-class worker. You have these large corporations being able to avoid taxes, threatening to move to other countries, and it's time to rethink our entire tax policy and say to the wealthy and say to these large corporations, if you want the benefits of America, you have to contribute, you have to pay a fair share of taxes.
Right. Also, you talk about breaking up the big banks. Shouldn't we be looking at pretty much every sector in America? It seems like every industrial sector, every commercial sector is dominated by 3 or 4 companies.
You're right, Tom, and I know you have talked about the Sherman antitrust law.
Yeah.
The theory of capitalism is that you're supposed to see vigorous competition, and that ends up benefiting the average consumer, worker, and everybody else. But that's certainly not the case right now, as you've indicated, not only in financial services, but in media, and area after area after area, agriculture. You're seeing a handful of entities control their sector of the economy at great expense, I think, to consumers and to employees.
Senator Bernie Sanders with us. He'll be taking your calls next in our national town hall meeting, Brunch with Bernie, here on this beautiful Friday in Washington, D.C., and no doubt up in Vermont. We'll be right back with your calls for Senator Sanders.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And be sure to check out Bernie's website, sanders.senate.gov. And welcome back. Michelle in Walterboro, South Carolina, watching Free Speech TV on the Direct TV satellite system. You're on the air with Senator Sanders. Michelle.
How you doing, sir?
Good.
Just fine.
I wanted to really thank you for what you did for us vets, for trying to help push that bill. I sure appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
quick intro.
And I just got one thing I need you to try to help us address, too, with the veterans, with our veterans claims. You know, a lot of people don't understand that once you file a claim, if you don't get a rating, you can't really get the services that you need because you're still not qualified as having a disability.
Right.
You have a disability dealing with the doctors at the VA hospital, but when you try to go try, like with me myself, before I went to war, I was a police officer. So I tried to change careers, so I wanted to try to use voc rehab to help me get retraining. When they took me to voc rehab, they told me I wasn't qualified because I didn't have a disability. But I've been diagnosed with PTSD. And they just dragging their feet about trying to get my claim adjusted so I can get my rating, so I can get the services that I need.
You're raising a very important point and one that we are working hard on. Here's the story.
Thank you, Mitch.
In terms of disability claims, before Obama became president, these claims were processed by paper, if you can believe it. The VA was probably the last major entity, certainly in the United States, if not the world, in a major country that was processing zillions of pieces of paper without doing it electronically. Shinseki came in and began that very long and difficult process, and that's where they are right now. So they have made significant progress in cutting back the claims backlog. I think we've cut it about in half, still have a long way to go. But the caller's point is absolutely right. We need to continue that effort. When people apply for a claim, they deserve to have that claim adjudicated in a reasonable period of time, and there needs to be an appeal process as well. So I appreciate what the caller said. He's right, and it is an issue that the VA is working on very hard right now.
Patricia, watching Free Speech TV on DirecTV in Portage, Wisconsin. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hi, both of you. I'm a journalist for the Capital Times, and I write a rare living wildlife column for the Capital Times every other week. And large mammals and wildlife are going off this planet, and the biodiversity destruction on Earth is parallel to climate change as an issue, according to scientists. So I heard Senator Sanders say that he is a friend of Tester, Senator Tester out in the West, and it was a gift to Tester to keep elected to get the wolves delisted for the ranchers out there, and we really need our wolves relisted. Can you do something about this? We really are destroying our wildlife in this country.
Well, I share your concern about the extinction of many species, and that is a huge issue, I think, to some degree attributable to climate change. And it's not just the issue of wolves. It is, I was reading just the other day, Tom, I think the loss of sexual differentiation among frogs and various fish in terms of what's happening. So yes, that is an issue that I do feel very, very strongly about, and we'll talk to Senator Tester.
We will be back 20 minutes past the hour. Past the hour. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour. Senator Bernie Sanders conducting his national town hall meeting here. And Jeff in San Francisco, California, you are on the air with Senator Sanders. Jeff? Okay, let's try Mike in Chicago. Hey, Mike, can you hear me?
Yes, Senator. The president, I believe, said in June that in regards to the VA scandal, he would let Eric Holder follow through on any criminal prosecution. I have zero confidence in this Attorney General. For the last 6 years, he's been asleep. No banksters in jail. No money returned to the Treasury. I just find that my stomach's kind of turned on that. What do you think about that?
Well, Mike, there has been some money returned to the Treasury. As I mentioned earlier, just this recent settlement with Bank of America will bring billions into the Treasury. And that's also been the case with some other banks. But has it been enough? The answer is absolutely not. the large Wall Street financial institutions committed a horrendous crime against the people of this country, and in fact the people of the world. And as a result of the financial collapse, what has happened to millions and millions and millions of people all over the world is just extraordinary in terms of high unemployment, in terms of loss of homes, loss of life savings. So do I think Wall Street has paid the proper price for the crimes that they've committed? Absolutely not. None of these guys have gone to jail. They have paid billions of dollars in fines, but for them, that's chump change. That's breakfast money for the average American. So I think that the White House has not been as aggressive enough from day one in dealing with Wall Street. And there are some people who have said that, not only are these financial institutions too big to fail, i.e. that we've got to bail them out or the whole economy collapses, but the CEOs are too big to jail. And there was actually some sentiment last year coming out of the Department of Justice saying if we jail some of these big guys, it would be so unsettling to the financial community that it might lead to more financial problems, which I think is pretty crazy. Bottom line is that when so few people have control of so much money and have so much power, it is a danger to the economic and political system of this country, which is why we have got to break them up. 6 financial institutions should not have assets equivalent to 60% of the GDP of the United States of America. That's just too much. So answer your question, the Obama administration has done some things, but nowhere near enough.
Stella in Providence, Rhode Island. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hi, I have a question about the congressional oath, specifically the clause that says, I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion. It doesn't seem to be too operational in the current legislature with their incessant filibusters and silencing cogent matters in committee. Isn't it possible to sue Congress for a violation of oath of office in a countersuit?
Well, I think, Stella, the countersuit has got to be at the ballot box. That's what democracy is about. And I think at the bottom of all of this is the unbelievable power that big money plays in the political process. So right now you have the Koch brothers and other billionaires spending hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars trying to elect candidates all over the country who are pledged to defend the interest of the wealthy and the powerful. And day after day in the halls of Congress, people are afraid to offend these very powerful people, many of them who come from the fossil fuel industry. So if you ask yourselves why it is that when the scientific community is, 97% united upon the fact that climate change is real and caused by human activity, why isn't Congress doing anything? Why do the Republicans continue to not deny the scientific reality about climate change? And the answer has a lot to do with the Koch brothers who make their money in fossil fuel, other energy companies who say, hey, we don't want regulation. We don't want you to do anything. We're making a whole lot of money. So I think on issue after issue, you're seeing a Congress which is dysfunctional. I think a lot of it has to do, though, with the power of money and the power of the 1% and their lobbyists to control what goes on.
Jim in Lockport, Illinois. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Senator Sanders, I would like to thank you and your colleagues on both sides of the aisle for passing that legislation. Long overdue.
Thank you.
My question to you is, about 2 weeks ago, I seen on a television show Steve Smith, who ran the McCain campaign. He mentioned that if the Republicans do not pass comprehensive immigration reform, that they will no longer be a national party. I was wondering if you agree with that, and if you agree with that, do you think the Republicans should change their logo from the elephant to the woolly mammoth?
Well, it's a good question. It's a long. I think an honest answer would be a long answer, probably more time than we have. But this is what I think. I think it is pretty clear to most observers, I mean, not just to you or me, that the Republican Party has turned its back on minorities, on poor people, and on those people who are supportive of immigration reform. Whether or not they become the party of the woolly mammoth or not, I don't know. It has There's a lot of other factors involved there. In this coming election in November, most people believe the Republicans will retain control of the House for a variety of reasons. It's about even money whether they will gain control over the Senate. And that has a lot to do, Jim, with the fact that 60% of the American people don't vote. And if you're talking about lower income people or young people, the numbers are about 70 or 80% not voting in an off-presidential election. So to me, the interesting and important question is, how does it happen that so many people who today are really, really hurting, whether it's immigration issues, whether it's economic issues, whether it's healthcare issues, how does it happen that those people are not participating in elections when if they did participate, Republicans would in fact be a minority party?
Senator Bernie Sanders with us. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour. We'll be back with Senator Sanders in just a few minutes, taking more of your calls. Be sure to check out Bernie's website, sanders.senate.gov.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 866-987-THOM.
Also over at Bernie's website, you can sign up for the Bernie Buzz, his regular newsletter, plus it's just a great news aggregation site, sanders.senate.gov. Welcome back to your media support group for We the People of the United States of America and the planet. The Thom Hartmann Program. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour, our national town hall meeting with Senator Sanders, taking your calls. You're back with us from Burlington?
I am right here.
Great. Okay. Steve in Phoenix, Arizona. You're on the air, Senator Sanders.
Good afternoon, Senator. I salute you, and you embody what's good and right in our politics in our country these days. However, here, what I've got is a question regarding the Postal Accountability Act. It was passed in 2006, a 10-year bill, by this voice vote, which is wrong. We haven't been able to repeal it due to the Republican-led Congress. And what I'm wondering is, we're approaching 2015 here shortly. Isn't the clock about to run out on this, just, having it funding itself anyways? And if not, when does it run out? Thank you, sir.
Okay, Steve asked an important question. And, Tom, it always amazes me, wherever I go, people, in fact, are concerned about what happens to the Postal Service. And I had the opportunity a month or so ago to speak to the National Association of Letter Carriers and reminded them of all of government agencies. The Postal Service, in fact, is the most popular, and people do very much appreciate having letter carriers coming up to their doors and chatting with them and delivering the mail, and et cetera, et cetera. As Steve reminds us, back in 2006, an onerous provision was put into postal legislation which said that in a 10-year period, the Postal Service was going to have to raise in a 10-year period they would have to raise 75 years worth of retiree health benefits, and that comes out to about $5.5 billion every single year. The result of all of that is that this year, in terms of operating profits, Postal Service will earn about $1 billion a year. But after they pay off the $5.5 billion, they are $4 billion in deficit. What we are working very hard on and have introduced legislation to do is, among other things, repeal that provision. That account now has, as I recall, over $40 billion in it. No other agency of government, no private sector company has had to deal with an onerous burden like 75 years of retiree health benefits in a 10-year period. So, Steve, we are working very hard to end that burden and to make some other changes in the Postal Service, which will give them the flexibility they need to continue to provide rapid and good quality service to the American people. Among other things, what we're working on right now, the Postmaster General has come up with a concept to eliminate about, as I recall, some 80 processing plants all over the country. I think we've got a letter out there now which has dozens of co-signers on it, which says, no, do not eliminate these mail processing plants, do not slow down mail delivery. In addition, do not end Saturday mail. Let's get rid of this onerous financial burden on the Postal Service. And those are some of the issues that we're working on to make sure that the Postal Service remains strong for years to come.
Anita in San Antonio, Texas. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Yeah, hello, Senator Sanders. I do hope you run for president. I think the American people need your voice. But my question is, what do you think Republicans will do if they gain back the Senate, if they regain the Senate?
Anita, thanks for that very simple and direct question. It is an enormously important question. I think most Americans really do not have a clue about what the Republican Party is about. In summary, this is what the Republican Party will do. If you think we have massive income and wealth inequality in America, they will go further. They will lower tax rates for the very wealthiest people in this country. They'll probably move to repeal the estate tax entirely, which will be a huge tax break for the top maybe 0.1% of the American families in this country. They will lower corporate tax rates, so the corporations will be contributing a smaller percentage than they currently do into the federal coffers. They will probably reignite the attack against Social Security and move to cut Social Security benefits. They will certainly move to end Medicare as we know it and put it into a voucher form of government. They will make massive cuts in Medicaid, federal aid to education. They will move to do away with the ability of the EPA to develop and pass rules limiting carbon pollution or pollution in general. They will move, in terms of campaign finance, probably to do away with all types of campaign finance regulations so that the Koch brothers and other billionaires can buy and sell politicians at will. The fear that I have had for a number of years is that this country is moving away from its democratic foundations, one person, one vote, a strong middle class, into an oligarchic form of society where the elections are controlled by big money interests and the economy is controlled by a small number of large multinational corporations. Under the Republican rule, that trend will be significantly accelerated. So I'm doing everything that I can to see that the Republicans do not gain control of the United States Senate.
James in Spring City, Tennessee. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Senator Sanders, what is it I can do to help, sir?
Well,
in any way, shape, or form.
Well, James, I think what we all have got to do, these are such terribly difficult times for our country. So many people are hurting. I think the politics of the nation has gotten people demoralized. Certainly what we're seeing around the world is very depressing. Never-ending wars, total reactionaries moving in Iraq. But I think what we have got to do, James, and it's you and it's me and it's everybody else in our country, is to understand that the stakes are extraordinarily high, not just for ourselves, but for our kids and our grandchildren and for the future of the planet. So we have got to do politics in a way that we have never done it before. And that is get involved, reach out to people who may disagree with us on this or that issue, make demands upon politicians, organize at the grassroots level. What disturbs me very much is on any given Saturday afternoon, everybody will be talking about football or basketball or the weather, and people will not be talking about what goes on in our country politically. And we've got to change that culture. Honest people can have disagreements. We all do. But people have got to be thinking and engaged. How do we stop the decline of the middle class? How do we deal with income and wealth inequality? How do we deal with climate change? How do we create jobs in all of rebuilding our infrastructure? People have got to be thinking about it. And the good news, James, is that when people get involved, when they demand that their government start representing ordinary people and create jobs and raise the minimum wage and expand Social Security and not cut it, when people do that, we're going to win this. We're going to win it. But we've got to broaden the political base. We can't allow a situation to go on where 40% of the American people are voting in this election. and billionaires are pouring huge sums of money in it. That's not democracy. So, James, in any and every way that can work in your community, just get involved, get other people involved, get people to start thinking about these issues. And if you do that, that will, spread the word and get other people excited as well.
George in Chicago, you're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Oh, thank you for taking my call, gentlemen. Bernie, I'm not sure if you were in the Senate in 2006 yet. Were you still in the House then?
I was elected in 2006. I was not in the Senate.
All right. Well, here's the question that's been bothering me for a long time. Maybe between the two of you, you can answer it. When the 2006 Postal Accountability Enhancement Act was proposed in the lame duck Congress after the resurgent Democrats won back control of the House and the Senate in that election, why did the Democrats not put their foot down and filibuster it and put a stop to it immediately? Why did they?
That is a great question, and I don't know the answer. I think what happens is sometimes significant provisions get placed in bills, and people don't see what the implications of them are. And this was clearly an oversight. You're right. There's no ifs, buts, and maybes. I was in the House at the time. I think people what had happened is, at that particular time, the Postal Service was running a profit. They were making money, and they had been for a number of years. And once that provision was in and they had to cough up $5.5 billion every year, then they were, quote-unquote, in the red. Not to mention the decline in the economy, which made a bad situation even worse for them. But you're right. I can't give you a good answer. It was an absolute screw.
Wasn't it inserted in conference committee?
Well, nonetheless, wherever it was, and that may be, I don't know, Tom. That may have been the case. And sometimes things get inserted and people are not aware. There's a lot of things flying around and people don't pay attention. But it was absolutely an oversight, and George is right.
Right. We have just 30 seconds. Could this also be an example of why our legislators shouldn't be spending 5 hours a day on the phone raising money?
To say the least. And on that issue, we can go on and on and on. People just don't realize the power of money, not only in terms of the influence of billionaires, but what it does is force the non-billionaires, the good guys, in order to raise substantial sums of money to fight back. They're on the phone raising money rather than dealing with the legislative business of the United States of America. And it is a terrible, terrible, terrible situation. Now, good news in that one. In September, there's going to be legislation on the floor of the Senate to overturn the constitutional amendment to overturn Citizens United. And we've got to pass that and get people involved in that struggle.
It's a great start. And people can learn about that at sanders.senate.gov. We'll be right back with more of Senator Bernie Sanders in our Brunch with Bernie Hour, our national town hall meeting here on the Thom Hartmann Program. Stick around.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
And be sure to check out Bernie's website, sanders.senate.gov, and you can also find him very easily over at Facebook. And welcome back. Thomas in Sierra Vista, Arizona, watching Free Speech TV on the Dish Satellite TV network. You are on the air live with Senator Sanders.
Yes, sir. I have a question. Supposedly, Governor Brewer has taken Obamacare, and the poverty guideline is 133%, but they're telling citizens here that it's $958. Now, my mother's 82, and she only gets a little bit over that, which is way below the poverty guideline. But they're telling her that since she has Medicare at her age, she doesn't qualify for Medicaid. And you know how the elderly are. They don't want to pay that extra 20% to the doctor because their income is so limited already. So how can Governor Brewer get away with this?
Thomas, that is a good question, and I just don't know the issue. I just am not familiar with what's going on in Arizona. I would urge you to call up not only the governor's office, but call up people in the state administration and get clarity on what she is, in fact, entitled to have.
Okay. Jim, watching Free Speech TV in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Yes. I heard Bernie's speech from December 13th, 2013, and I understand Bernie's very up to speed on this H-1B program. What I want to propose is that the LCA application that you have to pre-apply for the H-1B, that information used to come right off the Labor Department into websites around the country. That information was taken off, made unavailable in 2000 when Bush came into office. Now I went back, and that makes people able to go out and apply for those jobs because that information's out there in the public domain. And what I wanted to say is there some way we can get that information in real time today? Right now, when I went to the Labor Department, it's 5 years old.
Thanks for that information, Jim. The answer is yes. Thank you for alerting me to that. The issue with H-1B is that theoretically, at least, employers are supposed to be reaching out and trying to advertise the jobs that are available to Americans before they're bringing people from other countries into the situation, but into the country. But obviously, if Americans are not made available to the job openings, then what they will be able to do is just reach out and bring cheaper labor in from abroad. So this is an issue we have, as Jim indicated, been much involved with. I think a lot of these big companies are not telling the truth. They're simply saying, well, we can't find workers in America able to do this. We have to bring people in from Russia or Eastern Europe or whatever. And often that is not the case. So Jim's point, I think, is that Americans have got to be made available about the job openings that are available before we bring people from other countries in to fill those jobs.
Right. And we could also not only use that to make the jobs available to people, but also to essentially shame the companies that are scamming the system by trying to get cheaper engineers, for example.
Absolutely. And it's very clear. I mean, there may well be an instance of there's one very, very specialized job here or there that they can't find somebody in their community fine. But many of these jobs are not all that specialized, and there are thousands and thousands of American workers who can perform that work, and they should be able to have those jobs before they go into Russia and other countries to bring workers in.
We'll be right back with Senator Bernie Sanders in our National Town Hall meeting, Brunch with Bernie, right after this. It's 10 minutes before the hour. Thom Hartmann here with you. Max in Harrison Township, Michigan, listening on Sirius Satellite Radio. You're on the air with Senator Sanders. Or Mike, I'm sorry. I said Max. It's Mike.
No, that's fine. And first, let me applaud you, Mr. Sanders, for doing this 1 hour a week and the access to you. That 5 hours a day they do on the phone campaigning for cash, they ought to do well by their constituents and spend time taking phone calls from them.
Mike, I think, let me interrupt you. I think that is a great idea. It sounds to me that more of my colleagues are not on the air answering questions from ordinary people. We need to do much more of that and spend a lot less time raising money. You're absolutely right. What's your question?
Unfortunately, I could never get a hold of my senator, Stabenow or Levin. You always get their call screeners. But real quickly, because I'm a first-time caller, and I do got a couple of questions. As far as the tax code, they say we got the highest tax rate, corporate tax rate among any country.
All right, Mike,
let me
interrupt you on that one. That's what they say. It is not true. What they're talking about is the nominal tax rate. Nominal is the tax rate that's on the books, which is 35%. In reality, the real tax rate the corporations pay is much, much lower than that, somewhere, if I'm not mistaken, around 12, 13%, which is about average internationally. And some major players like Verizon or Boeing pay, in fact, zero. So nominally, it could be 100%. It doesn't matter if nobody pays it. But I interrupted you.
Correct, and that's what I was going to say about, like, GE. They don't,
That's right.
Sponsor of the president. And now, a fellow you called from Chicago about
Mike, I'm going to have to ask you to call back next week with another question because it's one per call. Pat in Beloit, Wisconsin, you're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Yes, Senator Sanders. First of all, if you want to know what the Congress is going to look like. Look at Wisconsin, where there's very few jobs created and a whole lot of social engineering passed in our legislature.
You mean when Republicans take over?
That's right. I have a question. Recently, they've been showing an advertisement that says I should call and contact my congressperson because free TV, quote unquote, is going to end because evidently cable companies and the satellite companies want to control the airways, and that we will no longer be able to receive antenna TV. Can you explain that?
Not completely, but what I think has happened, and Tom, if you know more than I do about this, please jump in.
I don't.
There has been an app. Tom, do you know more than I do about this? I know a little bit.
No, I'm not familiar with this, and sometimes when these kind of ads, call your senator, are run, they're for the exact opposite of what they seem. I don't know what the ad is she's referring to or the legislation.
But certainly what is true is that many parts of the country, if you don't have cable, or if you don't have cable, you're getting very few stations.
Yeah.
That is the true reality.
Yeah. Kurt in Los Angeles, you're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hi, Tom. Hi, Uncle Bernie.
Hi, Kurt.
How you doing?
Good.
Hey, well, I got a question. Remember after World War II, when the American spirit was high and it was buy American, buy USA, support your American producers of goods and services, and even the USDA seal of approval came out for beef, and so you could trust, when you seal of approval, you knew it was good beef, and so. Fast forward to today, if, as you say, some of these corporations have now turned their back on America and are shipping jobs overseas, is it possible we can start some type of good corporation seal of approval? And it would, then, in order to qualify, the corporation is American-owned and does not ship jobs overseas and pays most of its taxes. That way people can know what companies to seek out when they go to try to do commerce and do business and support those that support Americans.
Pat, that is a great point. And in fact, in various ways, we are working on types of legislation that does that. Right now, you have companies, as Kurt indicated, that have shipped massive amounts of jobs to China and other countries that are doing everything they can to avoid paying American taxes, and yet they love the American government and the taxpayers of this country when it comes to corporate welfare and other benefits. And I think what Kurt is saying, and I agree with, and there are a number of pieces of legislation that address this issue in various ways, is to say, wait a minute, let's not be rewarding those companies who are selling out the American people, but let's reward those companies that are providing decent jobs here in the United States and paying their fair share of taxes. So I think Kurt is on to something that is exactly right, and there are various ways to approach that issue, and some of us are working on it. But the idea of giving corporate welfare to companies who work day and night to move abroad, to American workers out on the street to avoid paying their taxes, that's crazy. And we've got to change that and reward those companies who are doing the right thing.
Senator, we have about 10 seconds, more than 1 minute to go. So closing thoughts? Or?
Well, the closing thoughts are that these are difficult times for our country, but as Tom and I have discussed quite often, demoralization and despair really are not options, because then difficult situations become even worse. What we have got to do is to understand that the vast majority of the people in this country do not believe in this right-wing Republican agenda of more and more tax breaks for people who don't need it, corporations that don't need it, ignoring climate change, ignoring the needs of the middle class and working families. That is not what the American people believe. That is not what they want. But that is precisely what the American people will get if 60% of the American people do not come out, if 60% of the American people do not come out and vote, as the case being projected now by the political pundits. So what we have got to do is mobilize the American people, get them to think about the issues, come out and vote, participate in the political process, so we can go on from there. But that is the first step forward.
Yeah, absolutely is. Senator Sanders, thanks so much for the great work you're doing and for dropping by again today.
Okay, Tom. Thank you. Take care.
Great talking.